Let's keep moving on with another application problem here. So we're talking about data plans here. I think we can all relate to that. So a college student is choosing between two data plans on her new cell phone. Both plans include an allowance of 2 gigabytes of data per month. The monthly cost of each option can be seen as a function and represented as an equation. So option A of x equals 60. Option B of x equals 10x plus 25. Okay, so let's think about what the variables are. So the input x is the gigabytes of data over the monthly allowance. So you got your 2 for sure, and then using over that, and that's essentially what x is, how many gigabytes over your monthly allowance that you have. And then let's think about what that would mean then for the cost. So it produces a cost, right? So x is the input, the gigabytes of data over 2 gigabytes, and then that produces some sort of cost for our plan. So the student decides to find the values of a of 1 and b of 1 and compare them. What are these values? All right, so I'm going to make this one the red one. Okay, so let's say the a function is the red one. So a of 1, so if we put 1 in, notice this first function, it always comes out to 60. Okay, so what are these values? So a of 1 equals 60, so that is the value right there. So one gig over allowance is $60. Okay, and let's go with purple for the next one. So b of 1. All right, this one we actually have to make a little calculation, right? So 10 times 1 plus 25. So we're going to put 1 in for the input for x. So that would be 10 times 1, which is 10. 10 plus 25 would be 35. So 1 gig over allowance is $35. 1 gig over allowance is $35 in this case. All right, after looking at some of her past phone bills, she decided to compare A of 7.5 and B of 7.5. What are those values? All right, well, the nice thing with the first one, A of 7.5, no matter what we put in for the input, it always comes out to 60 in this plan. So A of 7.5 is going to be $60. B of 7.5, we're going to have to, again, do a little calculation here. So B of 7.5 means that we got to put, so 10 times 7.5 plus 25. So we've got to put 7.5 in for x. So that would 10 times 7.5 would be 75 plus 25, which is $100. So B of 7.5 is 100. If you want to put the dollar sign in there, I suppose you could. But B of 7.5 is 100. All right, so let's think about what each one of these plans really means then. So the option A plan, all right, where we have A of x equals 60, we know that the cost is going to be $60 no matter how many gigs over. How many gigs, I just keep saying gigs, so gigabytes over the allowance she is. So it seems to me, and you can interpret this a couple different ways, but it seems to me that this is really an unlimited data plan. All right, and maybe we'll actually answer that question. All right, but it seems to me that's really what we're talking about here. $60 for unlimited data. You get 2, but you really get more than 2, because no matter how many gigs over you go, it's still just $60. And then option B. All right, let's think about this for a second. So option B, seems like the cost is $25 no matter what. And then for every gigabyte you go over, it's an additional $10. As X is gigabytes over your 2 original gigabytes. So you have $25 no matter what, and then $10 per gigabyte over your allowance. So cost 25. And then $10 per additional gigabyte over 2 gigabytes. I'm going to abbreviate gigabyte, GB this time. All right, so $25 no matter what, and then $10 per additional gigabyte over the original 2 gigabytes. All right, so now let's actually translate this to a graph. Now, option A is a nice graph, right? Because you have 0 gigabytes, 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes. It does not matter, no matter what, how many gigabytes you are over. It still just costs $60 no matter what. All right, and it's a little bit hard to tell if this is like continuous or if it's like just these points here. You could probably connect these up. I'm not sure if there's fractional amounts per if you use like half a gigabyte or 2.5 gigabytes, but let's say that you can, and so we'll just kind of connect those up. So that's option A. And then let's think about option B here. So option B sort of starts with the $25 no matter what. So it's kind of like our y-intercept value. So 0 gigabytes over allowance. So remember, they get 2 gigabytes no matter what. So we're really talking about how many gigabytes over the allowance that we're talking about. And then an additional 10 per gigabyte over. So we got, if we're going to do 1 additional gigabyte, that means it's $10 more. So you're up to 35. 2 gigabytes over and another 10. So you're up to 45. Then 55. Then 65. Then 75. Then 85. And so on and so forth. So we graph this one, we sort of have this situation here, like that. So that'd be option B. So those are the 2 options. Now we can start to see that visually. And I'm going to actually go on to the next question here since it relates back to this. So the student has only budgeted $50 a month for her cell phone. She thought, I wonder how many gigabytes of data I would have for $50 if I go with option B, and wrote B of X equals 50. What is the answer to her question? All right, so if B of X equals 50 in option B, so let's go with option B here. So that's our purple option right up here. So that's 10x plus 25. So 10x plus 25 comes out to 50. That's what we're saying. So that would be your equation, and we're trying to figure out, all right, what amount of gigabytes over data. Now you could almost do this in your head, but let's just quickly solve that. So you got subtracting 25 from both sides. That gives us 10x equals 50 minus 25 is 25. And then to undo multiplication, we will divide both sides by 10. And so x equals 25 divided by 10, which is 2.5. And remember, that's gigabytes over the 2 gigabyte minimum. So 2.5 extra gigabytes is what she would get if she had a $50 a month budget and she went with plan B. All right. So I think we'll stop there for that particular problem. And you can maybe just think about, what's the break-even point here? When would you go with option A versus option B? This kind of is like a system of equations problem that we did last unit. And so that should remind you of that a little bit, hopefully, and so you can kind of see where that break-even point is, because one option is better than another option in certain situations.